So welcome everyone to Fusion. Obviously, I'm the financial head of Fusion Financial, and today we're going to be discussing pensions and specifically pension consolidation. Now, for some of you who may not be as aware of Fusion, Fusion is a larger group, and we specialize in accountancy. We have a tax department. We also specialize in recruitment. We have international services, as well as consulting. All these teams also provide webinars throughout the year on their specialisms. So keep an eye out. There might be something that's very useful for you. So welcome to join other webinars during the year. So today, obviously, we'll have a brief introduction and then we'll get right in it, talking about pensions and the process of consolidation and why it may be beneficial. And then we'll follow up with a Q&A. So hopefully you'll have some really good questions that you need answering, and we'll be able to assist you with that. So I'm going to introduce myself now. My name's Neil Jacobs. I'm head of financial and still a financial advisor. Been working within the profession for probably about 15 years plus, and have quite a large clientele list that I've been working with personally for a number of years. And really one of the key areas I like working with my clients on is assisting them in achieving their goals and aspirations. And because a lot of my clients are business owners, there's usually quite a lot on pensions each year we look at. Josh, little introduction on yourself.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Joshua Shepherd here at Fusion. I've been here for just coming up to 3 years now. I've been in the industry for coming up to 10 years. I started my career abroad, working with some international finance and kind of British expats moving abroad. And now I'm kind of on the other side of that, where I'm helping people here in the UK maximize their wealth, maximize their savings, and helping in any way I can to ensure that they're in a good position as they approach their retirements.
Brilliant, thank you. So Neil, myself and Josh, we both are financial advisors. We help our clients with their long-term financial planning, and part of that will be pensions. It is a specialism of ours, but not solely one area that we look at.
Yeah, so I'll just do a brief introduction on pension consolidation and what does it mean? What is it? And, I think over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a much bigger focus for people in consolidating their pensions. I'll just speak a little bit as to why that will be the case. So, over time, pensions used to be something that the employer would give the employee as a kind of guaranteed income from the day that they retired. Now, as employees started moving around, not staying with one company for as long as they used to, and as they began to live longer, this meant that these kind of guaranteed defined benefit pensions became much more expensive for the employers. So what that meant was, rather than continuing with defined benefit pension schemes, there was a big transition to defined contribution pension schemes, which is essentially the employer and the employee both paying into a pension pot and using that pension pot to fund your retirement at the age of 55, 60, 65, whenever you reach that age. So why would you consolidate your pension? Previously, there's been no need to maximize the potential of the pensions you've got because there's generally only been one or two. But as time's gone on and employers have bought into these defined contribution pension schemes, and the government have introduced additional rules and regulations, meaning that every employer has to offer their employees a pension scheme, what it means is that each employee as they're moving around in their career, staying at one company for a couple of years, moving on, staying somewhere else for 3 or 4, and then moving on again. As they get on in their careers, they find themselves in a place where they look back and all of a sudden there's 4, 5, 6 different pensions that they're a member of, but they haven't kept up to date with exactly what's going on in that individual pension. So pension consolidation is essentially the bringing together of these multiple pension pots that you've got into one easy to manage pension, so that when you get to retirement, you're only drawing down from one pension scheme rather than having 4 or 5 different smaller payments coming into your bank account for you to spend in retirement. Okay, so why would you consider pension consolidation? Well, like I said, it's much simpler and easy to manage. You know exactly what you've got in exactly one pot, rather than thinking, I've got this here and this there. What is the total amount? I don't actually know. You've just got one kind of login details to a platform or a pension provider, which says exactly the amount that you've got, exactly where it's invested, and exactly what the costs and charges are. And so from there, when you get to retirement, you can choose to either take an income or draw down flexibly from it, so that it provides you with the relevant funds that you need in retirement. Okay. And who should consider pension consolidation? Well, anybody can consider it, but it's not always right for everybody. So it's important to remember that in order to get to a stage where you're consolidating your pensions, you need to have ruled out all of the reasons not to consolidate. So people with multiple pensions from previous employers, they should be looking at the potential of consolidating their pensions, but that doesn't mean they should definitely consolidate each scheme. But people who are looking to get organized and bring everything into one pot should definitely be open to the idea of making some changes to their older style pensions and bringing them into a much more easy to manage single pot, which they have full access to.
Thanks, Josh. So pension consolidation, and for me, it's effectively being able to centralize all your pensions into one place and regain control. It allows you as the pension owner to receive effectively one statement, one area to review how much you have, how it's performing, what funds you're in, and effectively just keep track of your planning for your retirement. It's something, I guess, over the years, probably the worst I've seen is a client come to me towards the end of their working life and they had 15 pensions, and 4 of them were with the same provider. So it's about just keeping on top of your pensions at an early stage. And like Josh said, in some occasions, some of these pensions may not be suitable to transfer due to numerous reasons. But it's just allowing you to feel a lot more in control of your retirement planning, easier to make changes because everything's in one plan rather than having multiple. On many occasions, it can help you reduce the fees because everything's in one area. Usually providers will provide you a discount because the funds under management is kept with them. That for me is only one of the things when it comes down to fees. For me as a financial advisor, when working with a client in helping them achieve their aspirations for retirement, having all your pensions in one area, it allows us to manage and grow their portfolio. And also when it comes to providing forecasts on what they may achieve in retirement, it becomes a much simpler task for the end user, being the client, and for the advisor being able to communicate with the client in regards to their pensions and how they're performing, as well as contributions. They're probably the 2 key areas there. When you review your pensions and set an investment goal, whether that is a risk-based goal or a performance-based goal. If you have numerous pensions all over the place, I'll tell you from a financial advisor's point of view, it's difficult for us to manage that if someone has 10 pensions with 10 different investments spread across. So having all your pensions held in effectively one place allows you, the pension holder, to be a lot more targeted and a lot more informed on how they're doing. And if you do have a goal of, I want to retire at this age and I would like to retire on this level of income, you'll be able to have a lot more focus rather than having to log into 5 different or 6 different accounts to get an idea. It also should provide you a lot more flexibility once you've consolidated. Due to recent change, less recent these days, but reforms in retirement planning through pensions, drawdown and so on, and the different ways one can draw down on their pension. When an advisor looks at consolidating, usually this is an area we will consider when looking at a new provider. So we would sit down with the client, understand what their goals are, what their aspirations are, discuss the sort of options that will be available to you now while you're accruing your pensions, and also potentially later on when you are ready to retire, and what options may be available to you then. And due to the numerous options available, clients need to have that flexibility rather than building something up and then having to make potentially other changes at a later stage. So for me, to summarize, some of the biggest benefits of consolidating is, number 1, control. Number 2, savings. And number 3, effectively being able to achieve your goals and aspirations, because you've just got more visibility as an individual on where you are on that journey.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. So as I said before, pension consolidation is a good place to begin to look into, but each individual pension that anybody may have is a benefit in its own right. So what is important is to understand the benefits of each of the individual pensions that you have before making any decisions to change or rearrange the structure of your overall pensions. So within each scheme that you may have, built into that, there may be exit fees if you were to transfer away. Now, that could provide a barrier from transferring your pension into a consolidated pot. It may not be a great reason to stop you from doing that, but some of the pensions that you have may have built-in exit fees which will stop you doing that. So that's something to consider when looking at an overall consolidation package, right? Some of the pensions you may have will have guaranteed benefits. So again, each pension is unique in exactly what it's offering. No pension really is the same. And because some of the older pensions that some of the employers may have offered you will have built-in guarantees or benefits or enhanced levels of tax-free cash, it's important to understand exactly what that means, not only from a consolidation point of view, but from a retirement point of view as well, so that you know exactly how that pension is going to benefit you later on in life. So if there were guaranteed benefits or guaranteed annuities or an enhanced level of tax-free cash, then it's very important that you understand that if you transfer away from that scheme, that those benefits may be lost, which means, is it right to transfer that pension into a single scheme in order to achieve this goal of pension consolidation? Well, perhaps not. And the reason perhaps not is because you'll be losing something which you'll no longer have upon completion of that transfer. Okay. One of the other considerations that you need to be aware of is the performance. So each of the individual pensions that you've got will be invested in a slightly different way. Now, how are they invested? Well, generally speaking, as you join a new employer, you get given a form to join the pension. And on that form, there are 3 options. Are you low risk, are you medium risk, or are you high risk? Now, 80% of the time, people tick their medium risk just simply because it's in the middle. They don't want to sound too cautious and they don't want to take too much risk. But what that means is that over time, despite being at different ages each time you join a new pension, you're always ticking the same risk profile and risk portfolio. But in reality, as you move along in your career, you're getting older, you're getting closer to retirement. The risk level that you should be taking within that pension should change over time. Now, it's very difficult to keep track of exactly where your funds are invested when you have multiple schemes, because you just simply don't have the time or the energy to make sure that each one is exactly where it should be from an investment point of view. So regardless of which box you ticked and which investments you're in, they will have performed somewhere along the line in a positive way. That's just the way that it works in terms of pensions, because over time it's likely that the return on investment will be positive. But that doesn't mean that it's performed well. That doesn't mean that it's performed badly. It just means that you need to understand how your pension has performed with respect to the risk level that it's in. So even if you've got a pension that's performed very well, it could be that you are very close to retirement and the risk level in that pension is higher than what it should be because you're now so close to retirement. And if that's the case, regardless of pension consolidation and bringing everything to one pot, we need to first make sure that you're not taking too much risk with regards to your overall goals and your overall objectives to get to retirement with a sustained fund. Okay. And even if the policy has performed well, there still could be benefits to transferring that away and into a new pot, because by doing that, you'll be able to bring the combined funds of all of the different pensions, which will have performed in different ways throughout, into one single pot where you can now choose, probably with the help of a financial advisor, which investments you should be in. And those investments will match the risk level and the objectives that you have personally in order to achieve retirement, either in a sustainable way because you're very close, or in a high risk way because you're younger and your distance to retirement is much further. So there's a lot to consider before making a decision to consolidate, and there's a lot of ways that you can consolidate without fully considering each of your individual pensions in their own right. So there are companies out there, Pension B, for instance, just one, who offer a very good service with regards to pension consolidation, but there's no real consideration for each of your individual pensions in their own right. It's just a case of you saying, I want to consolidate, and then providing the facility to do so. But by doing that, you've missed out on the research and the analysis that goes into looking into the pensions that you have to make sure that pension consolidation is right or wrong for you. And I'll pass back to Neil for the final steps to consolidate.
Thank you, Josh. So the steps consolidate. When we are handed a file for a client, the first thing we do is effectively get the information from each pension provider. That is done from a letter of authority. And if you're doing it yourself, obviously you'd just be personally requesting information on each of your pensions. We'll review each of your existing plans and then effectively look at, are there any associated benefits to any of these schemes, whether that is protected rights, higher tax-free cash than the 25%, which is less common these days, but we do find them sometimes. If it could be a guaranteed annuity rate, which is overly generous. These sort of examples, which Josh explained quite clearly before, once you've moved away from one of those providers, those benefits have gone. So we'll look at that initially, then we'll look at the cost of the schemes, what you're invested in, match it to a risk level, compare it to the risk level the client has said they want to be, and then effectively make a recommendation on what should be kept, what should be transferred. If there were some schemes that need to be kept due to numerous benefits that we've identified, there could still be work to be done within the scheme on ensuring that the investment is matched with the client's specific risk profile, which we would learn during the initial process. Then we'll be working on the potential transfer of some of these schemes, and we'll work with the existing provider and the new provider and the process of moving everything along to the consolidated scheme. Once everything's moved over, the old schemes close. Now, the existing schemes you may keep, obviously suddenly you could have gone from having 5 or 10 different schemes to having 2. One where all your money's been consolidated, and one that we've advised you that it is best off keeping due to a specific reason. And suddenly there's a lot more control, a lot more understanding of what you've got, and now everything is in place. Now, when you work with Josh or myself, what will come along with that is also some work involved in working towards your retirement and discussing that. So how far are we on that journey will have a massive effect on that. So if you were, let's say, 25 or 30, then obviously we've got quite a long time to work with you until you retire. But someone who's in their 50s, obviously, depending on when they plan to retire, the time span is a lot shorter. So what does that client want to achieve in their retirement, and where are we now? And how do we achieve it? So that would be part of the process as well. At this stage, we can really move to some questions in regards to pension consolidation and pensions in general.
Thanks, Neil. I think there's a couple of questions in there. First one from Joanne. Thanks, Joanne. Do you think that the Labour government will abolish the tax-free 25% lump sum withdrawal? Well, to answer that, Joanne, it would be a purely speculative answer. But what I would say is that over time, that 25% lump sum withdrawal has always been there, and it's always been protected regardless of changes in legislation. So, previously, when the tax-free cash that you could take was higher, you could lock in that amount of tax-free cash regardless of the changes in the future. So I would say that anybody who's in a pension now, the likelihood is that your benefits are not going to be reduced at this point. But moving forward, if they did change the legislation, then for future pensions, they could be reduced. But anything existing, it would be my expectation that the 25% lump sum will always be there. Would you agree now?
I certainly would. It's certainly an area that I think would cause some uproar. Imagine we've all been saving into our pensions for God knows how many years. And for many people, one of the big selling points was that they get that tax-free cash at the end. That may be a useful tool to pay off that final part of the mortgage. To have that taken away after so many years of paying into a pension, I don't think any government would want to take that on.
Yeah. And then another question from Jane. Thanks, Jane. Says, what are your fees, and do you limit the portfolio pensions that you take on? For example, 250,000. Now, what I'll say, Jane, is that every conversation that we have with any prospect or potential client is different. So what they're looking to achieve is always different to what the next person is looking to achieve. So our fees are variable in terms of the people that we speak with and what they're looking to achieve, but we have a standard fee structure which starts at 3% of a recommendation to transfer your pensions into a new one, up to the first £250,000, and then 1.5% after that. So there's no limit with regards to what we would take on, and the the more that you would have, the reduced rate you would begin to pay on the fees.
Any other questions at all? Well, I think that's it there, but I'm just going to move on to the final bit. I hope you guys all found that really useful today, and really appreciate you all jumping on the Thursday morning. So thank you. I think one of the important things for all of you to know is there's a complimentary consultation you can all have with Josh or myself. No obligation. We can discuss where you're at now, give you some pointers, and hopefully take you on as a client. But at the end of the day, I think having that initial consultation with an advisor will definitely assist you if you've jumped onto this webinar and you've got thoughts about consolidating or potential concerns. Make use of this free consultation. We're here to help.
Yeah, just one last thing on that, Neil. And there's one more question from Matt that just says, is there a recording of this talk? There will be a recording. It will go on YouTube, and the link will be sent to everybody who joined, I believe. But just to go back to kind of the previous question from Jane. So with regards to fees, they only become payable when it becomes clear that there's an opportunity to work together. So the initial consultation, like Neil says, is completely free. And, you know, any of the initial research that we produce up until the point where you agree that our recommendations are beneficial to you, there's no costs involved. So it's very easy to get to a point where, you know, we've analyzed the pensions you've got and what you've got makes sense to consolidate. And then it's only at that point where you agree that our recommendation makes sense for you that we look to implement those fees. And it's only on implementation that that's taken. So thanks everybody for joining. Like you say, you know, we've got our information there. If anybody wants to talk to us, please feel free to get in touch.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for attending.